you for the intro. Welcome to Las Vegas. For those of you who don't live here, I've had the pleasure for the last 2.5 years of kind of growing with the project, the other project, and learning what it's all about. And when I heard the topic of this, the theme of this night, I thought, geez, I could give every other talk about influence and celebrity and social communication, but how do you do that in 15 minutes, and why would you want to continue to do that when you've started to boil down what things are really starting to net out? And I think the stories and the term influence often gets overplayed, right? It's like, ooh, influence. And about 5 years ago, when I started my company, I was fortunate to have a guy by the name of Shaquille O'Neal as my first client. So a large client, literally. And then started grabbing other athletes and celebrities and had the pleasure of working with a lot of influence. And this was when social communication was just starting to become popular with brands. So there were days where I felt like I was an influence broker. People would call, can so-and-so tweet about this? Can so-and-so do a video on that? And it was kind of an added value. Can you throw that in? Can you do that? Can you do this? We started getting good at understanding how to measure this and prove the value, explain how you can monetize it as a brand. And what I learned is that with influence, with brands and influencers, typically the only thing that we can do to offer influence immediately and engage and activate influence from someone that you don't know is usually money. You have to have a relationship prior. So that takes time. And so when it's time and someone has their checkbook and they're like, we're willing to pay for so-and-so to do this or that, that will happen. You will receive your impressions. They will go away. They probably didn't make an impact. And then what? You might as well have bought media. So as we learn that and we start to see everything evolve, what I realized is that you really have to understand what the influencer cares about and why they do what they do before you can influence them. And then when you finally build that relationship, it has to be equal value exchange. So much of what you just spoke about is definitely the philosophy that I subscribe to, and it comes down to really willing to put the time and effort in, right? Where purpose, passion, and skill collide is a really unique intersection, and that's where happiness resides for people. So a lot of times, it takes time to figure out what that intersection is. So with it being an equal value exchange thing, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna tell you a quick story. So I happen to have about 1 million people following me on Twitter, and some random girl from Wyoming who grew up in a trailer park has been able to build this influence, and I'm definitely going to use air quotes because that definition changes by the person. And so I've received a lot of offers along the way over the last 5-6 years. Hey, Chevrolet, we'll give you a car, we'll give you some money, will you tweet about us? Will you post videos? Will you do that? Will you do this? And it hasn't worked time and time again. Whether it's with clients or whether it's with me, it has to be authentic, right? So here's a quick story about the most influential moment of my life. I was asked by a friend to go to Africa in 2 weeks. Got an email from a friend and they said, hey, I'm with Charity Water, we're building this trip, can you go? And I'm like, oh geez, 2 weeks? Absolutely, I want to go to Africa, right? No money involved, heck yeah, let's go. So that relationship took about 2 years to build. Otherwise, it'd be like, who are you and what? And vaccines? Are you kidding me? So we went to Africa. We show up. Step out of the airport, and there were no roads, literally. We had to 4x4 because there was nothing there across this desert landscape. And we arrive at the first village, and before you know it, all of these people started coming up to our car. It was the only vehicle they've probably seen in a long time. All of these Ethiopians started to walk up and stare at us as if we were these aliens. They had never seen people that had such light-colored skin before. So here I have all of these people looking at me like I'm crazy. They come up and they start to kind of reach out and they want to touch my arm. and wonder what would happen. Then they pull their arm back, and they just don't know what's going to happen. They're shaking. So we're staring at each other, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting. We don't know how to communicate verbally, language barrier. I got my iPhone out, and I thought, let's take some photos. So they're staring at me, and I thought, take the photo, show them, these are my photos, what I see. And they thought that was cool. But then I thought, okay, this is not going to work for too much longer. What else can I do? I turned the camera around, and I showed them, I took a selfie with them. I flipped it to show them what was on the screen. The reaction is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. They had never seen their reflection before. Here we have kids, 8, 10 years old, and they didn't know what they looked like. And they had just found out. And they were awestruck. And at that moment I thought, okay, I'm not just on a trip to Africa to learn about the water crisis. Something much bigger is happening here. I can help them, but they can help me too. Because you know what, when I arrived in Ethiopia, I was suffering from a bit of a purpose problem. All this life that was so great from afar and it looked fabulous and jet setting with these influencers, but I had no idea why I was doing what I was doing. It was a major drought in that purpose bucket. So can you imagine being 8 to 10 years old, not knowing what you look like? And I'm thinking, geez, this is ironic. I've pretty much worried about what I look like every day of my life. They don't know what they look like, and they have real struggles. They don't even have clean drinking water. So I thought, okay. Then as I went to learn a little bit more about the water crisis, 800 million people globally do not have clean drinking water. Yet if you dig at any spot on land, on this earth, long enough, you will reach clean drinking water. And it takes about $10,000 to build a well that will serve 250 people for the rest of their lives. So $10,000, 250 people for the rest of their lives, this can happen. And so I was constantly confused. And the thing about this is just the women fetch water. So I'd watch them barefoot walk miles, but when they'd fetch the water, they'd actually arrive to a water source that wasn't even clean. Can you imagine how much time they could save in their day and what they could do if they didn't have to do that? If they could receive education and contribute. So I'm thinking this through, and then there was one day, this was an actual water source, and there were leeches in there. And you just don't even know the concept, and the context is just out of this world. This little boy walked up to me as I was leaving, and he motions over to come closer to him. I thought, oh, okay, what's going on here? So I walk over, and he shows me something in his hand, and he said, give me some birr. Birr is the currency in Ethiopia. And we were told, do not give anyone any money because you will create an uproar. Like, that is not a good thing, no money. And then he showed me in his hand what he had, and he had this little phone that he had made out of rock. And it was a Nokia phone. And I thought, I really want to make this purchase. I need that phone. Come over here. And he said, 15 birr, give me some birr. And I thought, we are now negotiating. I said, I only have 10 birr, 10 birr. He reached in his pocket, he grabbed 2 seashells, and he added it to the package. And he said, 15 birr. And I thought, wow, I am bargaining with a little boy entrepreneur in Ethiopia right now. Whoa. I pull out 20 birr, I give him more than he was asking for, and I said, thank you. That was my way of thanking him and congratulating him on passing my negotiations test. And I thought, you know what, we won't see any little girl entrepreneurs out there because they are busy also helping fetch the water. Got back home. I don't know if you guys have seen the link here in our wonderful city, but it exists and it is fun. It was a budget of $550 million that was spent to build it. And every time I drive by, I can't stop thinking about the fact that 55,000 wells could have been dug and 14 million people could have clean drinking water. And it just starts to put things into a different place. So I know it's not an accident that you guys are here listening to me and I'm here listening to all of these other stories. But it was a moment of, wow, we do have the ability to do something. Got back home, created a charity water birthday campaign, ended up building a few wells, raising the money, asking people to give me money to donate instead of money for gifts or birthday presents. And we were able to actually do something. And I think that that's a really good example of how charity water influenced me. Then, of course, I've been talking about charity water for years now, and I will give them the most amount of influence you can ever imagine. They really figured out and nailed where my purpose, passion, and skill collided. And that's a really cool equal value exchange that we created. So anyway, thank you so much.